His name was Manny Ellis, young man out of Tacoma in Washington State back in 2020. He was assaulted by police officers, and from the start, from the very beginning, people were lying.
All 7 of Pierce County Council members voted to approve a settlement amount of over $4 million to the family of Manny Ellis. Ellis was killed in March of 2020 while being taken into police custody. Video footage of Ellis's death led to calls for an independent investigation into the incident.
But we gotta understand some of the background. We gotta understand what happened here. Manny Ellis was just 33 years old back on March 3rd of 2020. He was being arrested by police officers in Tacoma in Washington State. It was claimed that Manny Ellis initiated an assault against police officers. That was the claim. That was the initial claim the officers made. As so often, we find out that Manny Ellis was assaulted by police officers, and when he tried to defend himself from being lynched by race soldiers, his defense of his own life was taken as him resisting. And not only do you have witness testimony, but you have video evidence that shows that Manny Ellis, he was saying he couldn't breathe. And instead of his pleas being heeded, well, Manny Ellis was hogtied face down with an officer on top of him and a spit bag placed over his head. And that was after he was tased, choked, punched, and kneeled on for an extended period of time.
At one point, scanner traffic picking up Ellis's voice as he pleads that he cannot breathe. His mother demanding an independent investigation into her son's death outside of Pierce County.
Those were the last words that I heard my son say to me. I love you, Mom. I love you, Mom. And I can't hear that ever again.
Once the fight was over.
Now stop, let's wait a minute for a quick second. Now, you see that guy in the video right there? His name is Ed Troyer. Ed Troyer is a sheriff here in Washington State for the Pierce County Sheriff's Department. And now Ed Troyer, he was involved in what happened to Manny Ellis. And now you might be asking how. Well, Ed Troyer, one of his deputies, was at the scene of what happened to Manny Ellis. And the Pierce County Sheriff's Department didn't reveal that. And so when you have an independent investigation that's supposed to be independent, well, you can't be independent if one of your deputies is involved and it's not being revealed. But there's another problem with Ed Troyer. He was brought up on criminal charges because this guy lied on a black newspaper carrier. At one night, a few years back, there was a black newspaper carrier named Cedric Altheimer in Washington State. He was delivering newspapers, and Ed Troyer thought that that was suspicious. And so Ed Troyer, he decided to follow the guy. They get into a confrontation, and Ed Troyer claims Cedric Altheimer was threatening to unalive him, to take him out. That never happened, and that's why Ed Troyer was brought up on criminal charges. He had his charges dropped on a technicality because essentially what happened with Ed Troyer was that he called a non-emergency number and claimed that this black newspaper carrier had threatened to do something to him, even though that was not true. And so Ed Troyer got off on a technicality. That's why the jury found him innocent, because they could only charge him based on him calling that non-emergency number. The charges stemmed from an incident that began at approximately 2 a.m. on January 27th of 2021 when Troyer called 911 officer line and told a dispatcher that the carrier, who is Cedric Altheimer, knows who I am and he threatened to unalive me. And that never happened. If those officers who showed up actually believed Troyer and they fully took Troyer's word, they could have hurt Cedric Altheimer for no reason, and that guy got off on a technicality. So when you hear that one of his deputies was involved, that's a problem. That's a major problem. And one of the Pierce County Sheriff's deputies, who's under anti-black racist Ed Troyer, assisted in the restraining of Manny Ellis, along with these 3 officers here: Christopher Burbank, Matthew Collins, and Timothy Rankin. If you scroll down here, you type in the word Pierce on the Seattle Times Watchdog article, you can see where Ed Troyer and his sheriff's department was trying to cover up the lynching of a black man. Governor Jay Inslee of Washington State handed the case to Bob Ferguson, the Attorney General's office, and the Washington State Patrol after it was discovered that the Pierce County Sheriff's Department, which initially investigated the case, had a conflict of interest because one of his officers helped restrain Ellis. So the same anti-black racist who got off on a technicality could not inform people that one of his deputies was involved in the lynching of a black man. Same guy.
In a complaint filed by the Ellis family, 2 Pierce County deputies were included for being on the scene during the arrest. Deputy Gary Sanders, who grabbed Ellis's leg and assisted in restraining him, and Lieutenant Anthony Messinio, who arrived later but allegedly never touched Ellis.
And as you can see, the trial is still ongoing for these 3 police officers who are on trial for what happened to Manny Ellis. And now that you see some of the background, now that you see excessive use of force, now that you see that the officers lied when they claimed that Manny Ellis just attacked them and that wasn't the case, and now as you see that Ed Troyer, the anti-black racist, is also involved, and the fact that the family had to struggle to even get charges brought in the first place, this shows you a pattern of how black folks are treated in Washington State. You know, this place claims to be so blue, so liberal, so loving, so accepting, but the moment you get a black person who is aggrieved, what do you see? Acquittals. You see settlements, but you never see justice. But we're gonna keep our eye on this case, but I want you to hear some of the backstory as to the reasons why people are suspicious, as to the reasons why it took so long to bring charges on the officers, and why they're so suspicious because they know Ed Troyer and other anti-black racists are also involved.